back to 7 Days of Legs. Today is day 3 and we're going to be tackling our hip flexors and our hamstrings. So before we get into our splits, we're going to do a little bit of a sequence, a couple different postures here. I'm going to break it down on one side and then I'll do it on the other side with you in real time. So first watch, then do. So to start, we're going to begin in a low lunge position. When we get here, and have one leg forward at a nice 90-degree angle, this other one's going to come behind me, flat on the mat. Here we're really going to think about, once again, as always, those awesome square hips, and that means that this back butt muscle is going to be working, pushing forward, and when we do that, we're really going to start feeling this in the hip flexor. Got to make sure that both those little hip bone laser beam dudes are pointing forward. And with a little bit of extra core engagement, we're going to make sure that we're not dumping into our little bag. So if this is working, pushing forward, get into that hip flexor. And when we do that little bit of core, we're really going to get into that hip flexor. So hang out here in this lunge. If you like, you can also do this with yoga blocks or even a chair beside you to help you keep your balance. And then we're going to come into a hamstring stretch. So from this lunge, our hips are going to go back, this front leg's going to straighten out, and you can let your toes go up towards the ceiling. From here, I'm going to angle a little bit because we're going to get kind of fancy. From here, whichever leg is forward, we're going to take the opposite side hand flat on the ground. We're going to take the same side hand then and grab just below the elbow of the first arm. And then the elbow is going to come just below the knee of the straight leg. When we push just a little bit into that elbow, you're going to find that you get a little bit of an extra stretch right behind the knee. You can stretch this area safely if you apply just a little bit of pressure, not on the knee, just below it. And by getting all of those little muscles in there, it's really going to help that front leg extend and get straight in your splits. So we'll hang out here, maybe rock your hips back and forth a little bit. And then we're going to get a little fancy again. So this front leg now, we're actually going to keep pulling it across the body. So rather than it being in line with the hip bone on the same side, so now we're going to cross the body to the opposite side hip bone. So by going across the body, we're now starting to get deeper into the hips. If you want to get a little extra fancy here too, you can take something like a yoga block, and once you cross the body, place it under the heel. Getting that little bit of extra height is going to really increase the intensity, really getting into the hips. Not mandatory, just an option. So now that we have that across the body, we're then going to start curling our body forward. This might feel really counterintuitive at first. I feel like when a lot of people are stretching, they try and really open up, arch the back, and it's very pretty. This is not pretty. However, we're going to think about, I like to call it the invisible goal because it's not going to happen, but we're going to think about taking the top of our head to our belly button. And when you get that really intense arch forward with the leg across the body, you'll find that you get a pretty intense sensation into this hip. The reason it's getting so intense is by having that forward fold with the crossbody stretch, you're actually getting into the nerves. Tight nerves are a thing. Sometimes you can have loose muscles but tight nerves. So having that forward fold plus the crossbody is really going to help get in there. So again, we have that front leg forward, can be on something, doesn't have to be. We're going to cross the body so it's in line with the opposite side hip bone. Then we're going to think about that head coming towards the belly button. So like a pissed off kitty cat, we're just going to arch the hell out of our back. And if this feels super weird and you need a little bit of extra help, you can even take one of your hands onto the back of your head and just give yourself a push. From here, you can even take your hips from side to side a little bit, especially if it feels super intense. Again, that rocking back and forth kind of just reminds your muscles that it is going to be okay. There's no need to freak out. So once you're done that, it's going to be the last posture in this whole sequence. You can come out, shake it off, and we'll do the other side. So this side I'm going to do with you in real time. If we're doing longer holds like this where you have one knee on the ground, you might find that it's a little intense and uncomfortable. If you have something like a yoga mat, you can also just double your mat up. Give yourself a little bit of extra padding behind that back knee. Or you can take something like a scarf or a sweater, place it under that back knee. Just give yourself a little extra padding if you need it. So, when you're ready, we're gonna do this side all together. Starting off in that low lunge, we'll make sure that both of those little laser beam hip bones are pointing forward. Got that back butt muscle working, pushing forward into the hip flexor. Nice core engagement. Hang out here for 2 more breaths. You'll notice too when I do that core engagement, every time I do it, body almost gives a little bit of a hollow forward. That's really getting into that hip flexor. Pulling our hips back, coming into that hamstring stretch, toes up towards the ceiling. Maybe give yourself a couple butt wiggles first. Angles you can see. All right, opposite side hand down to the ground. Same side hand crosses over, attaches onto that arm, elbow just below the knee. When I'm here, I'm thinking about pulling my tailbone back. That's going to lengthen this leg. Getting deeper into those hamstrings. And from here, taking that front leg, crossing the body. If you want, this is where you can put something underneath that heel to make it a little extra awesome. And now, that super weird curl forward. Thinking about that invisible goal, head towards the belly button. And release. So, do what you gotta do. Shake that off. Make sure you do both sides, and we'll reconvene shortly to do our splits. It's splits time. I'm going to begin on my bad side. The last couple of days I've been starting on my good side, and honestly, I highly recommend if you have a side that is less flexible, less deep, less easy, start with that side. Because if you start with your good side and go the other side, by the time you get there, you've already run out of patience, you've already seen what your good side looks like, and it can be a little disheartening when you go to your other side. Also, quick note, sometimes people are like, you have a good side and a less good side. Don't patronize me, I know what's up. I got a good side and I got a bad side. Eventually you start to get pretty balanced, but really let's call it like it is. Point is, I'm gonna start with my bad side. So when you're ready, grab something like your yoga blocks or whatever you're using to help keep your hips square. We'll get into that starting position and prepare for our minute. Start lowering, start a timer for us. As always, thinking about that back muscle being super engaged. Weight coming down through that front sitting bone. Give yourself that nice core tuck. Keep that back butt muscle working. Point your toes. Don't forget to breathe. Check your foot. Make sure it's not sickling. If you're feeling comfortable and you don't feel like you need your blocks, you can start doing things like taking your hands overhead. As you do, really make sure you check in with that core. And that's our minute. Tight today. Shake it off, bounce it out, do what you gotta do, prepare for the other side. And when you're ready, we begin. As always, starting off with that low lunge, engaging those back butt muscles, and begin lowering. Checking with the core, checking with the shoulders, check where your weight is coming down. If you're feeling adventurous, take those hands overhead. Remember too, if you can't get all the way down and you need to use the blocks, that's great. Do it. We care a lot more about form here than we do about getting deep. And if you're really far off the ground, do make sure that you use your yoga blocks the tall way. That way you can keep your body stacked over your hips instead of coming forward like this. You're almost there. Do that round of check-ins again. Shoulders, core, back butt muscles. And that is our minute. Congratulations, you made it all the way through day 3. I will see you here tomorrow, and in the meantime, give yourself a high five.